Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are having a fabulous morning already. If you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I am a mom, a Nana, a grad school student studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, a wellness advocate, jazzerciser, runner, although not doing much of that lately. I own an online activewear boutique, and I just really believe that, or I've learned that rather, that in my lifelong battle with depression and anxiety, that sharing that information and what has worked for me, as well as learning from others, kind of like peer support, is definitely the best way to continue growing and continue on a successful journey toward wellness. So if you're just stumbling on my page, let me know if you are here. If you don't see this till afterwards, hit hashtag replay in the comments or drop a question or comment. And know that Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. So if you are here and you say hi or ask a question and I don't respond, it's not because I'm ignoring you, I promise. It's because Facebook didn't show you to me. For example, I just saw a little face bubble, but not 100% sure whose it is. So wellness is a broad topic. It covers a lot of different things. And that's one of the reasons why Wellness Wednesday is so awesome, because we are all over the place. Last week, I did a road trip travel edition. Good morning, Miss Danielle. I did a road trip travel edition. My computer just went to sleep and I needed a wake. Because it was my third travel edition. The previous two have been flying to different areas of the country. This one was about our recent road trip for my boyfriend and his twins. Hey, Miss Mimi, it's you. Traveling, doing a little road trip to surprise my boyfriend and his twin sister for their 50th birthday. It was a lot of fun, learned a few things, failed to do a few things that I know, which is one of the reasons why Wellness Wednesday works, because even if it's items that we've heard over and over and over again, sometimes it just takes that one moment where it really clicks. So repetition is the key, just like it is when you are a child. So today I want to talk about some fun and unusual things that are actually good for boosting your mental health. Now, I said bizarre in my title, but some of them may not sound that bizarre. It just may be things that you don't think about on a regular basis that you may be doing or maybe should be doing to boost your mental health. And this idea started in my backyard the other day. About a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, year and a half ago, we decided to put a bird feeder outside. I was totally enthralled with the irises that explode in the spring back there, that are in pots out the back door, and some other flowers. I was starting to develop an unusual fascination with nature. I won't say that I've never been fascinated with nature, but over the past few years, it's really just something I've come to really appreciate. And so a couple years ago, maybe we put a bird feeder out, and then we put another bird feeder out, and then somebody gave us a small hummingbird feeder, and then we got hummingbirds. And actually for the last 2 Wellness Wednesdays, I have been able to see a hummingbird hitting the feeder right outside my window during the broadcast. So this is kind of where this idea started. Excuse the pollen cough. Because I was standing outside listening to the birds and watching the birds the other day and wondering if bird watching is on the list anywhere for boosting mental health. And I was talking with Eric about it, and the idea kind of formed from there. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But what I usually say, and everyone knows these things, but again, it's good to put them on repeat because we ignore them, or we sometimes need to be reminded. The things I usually talk about that boost wellness are diet and exercise, listening to music, dancing, quality time with friends and family, time alone and self-care, off-grid time, which means no phone, no electronics, just doing the things, maybe out in nature, sunshine, journaling, volunteering, meditation and prayer, and gratitude. Those are the things I talk about most often. But there's actually a laundry list of things I don't talk about, some of which I never thought about or maybe didn't know about, that are really helpful for boosting your mental health. And that's, again, kind of where this started. So first things first, bird watching, or just nature watching in general. I have developed a new appreciation for the things that God has created for us to observe and interact with. And bird watching is one of them. We now have several hummingbirds that are hanging out. We got our feeders out a little bit earlier this year. We've learned a lot. And it's really fun to watch them hit the feeders, sometimes chase each other, etc. We have all kinds of birds in our backyard. I can see a cardinal from here. They just seem to really enjoy our backyard between the feeders and the flowers and the tiki fountain. And the sound of mourning doves has always soothed me for some inexplicable reason. But being outside, watching the birds, yes, Mimi, exactly. It's very calming. Watching the birds, appreciating the uniqueness of each one, the flowers, all of that. It definitely has a calming and soothing effect that is unlike anything else I've experienced. I like looking at the differences in the flowers, looking at how quickly, learning the patterns of the plants, how quickly they can bud. I have 4 new buds on the iris plant right now, and by tonight they will be open and closed again, and that will be it. They're just one day. But bird watching or being in nature, there's definitely a lot of science behind how much it boosts your mental health. And there are so many different backyard birds, and we've been doing this just long enough now that we're starting to see different types of birds at different types of year, and beginning to get to a point where we can not only identify them, but identify some of their bird calls too. And Eric kind of likes to mess with them a little bit, and he'll put the bird call on his phone, and sometimes it gets him stirred up. That's a story for another day. He actually almost got himself in trouble with a wren up in Georgia because he was too near her nest when he was using these bird calls, and she was after him. She was not comfortable. But sometimes the bird calls work to call the birds, if we haven't seen them in a couple of days, back to the backyard. And it's just a really cool experience, and definitely one that I would say improves my mental wellness. So next up is reading. You know, for me, until I started business coaching, I wasn't doing a lot of reading. I devoured books as a child, but I just never seemed to make time to sit down and read. Also because I recognize that I have a somewhat addictive personality, so if I get into a story, I have a hard time putting it down. My daughter can tell you more about that because she runs into that same problem. So it's kind of an all or nothing thing. It's like if I pick up a book, I just have to keep reading, especially if it's a good one. But reading is a way, it's a form of escapism. So if we're struggling, or we're having a hard time, or we just feel completely out of control, sometimes we can pick up a story, a book, whether it's truth, fiction, whatever, and we can kind of escape from whatever's going on around us and have some control over that time that we're reading. And that allows us to improve our mental wellness. It improves our cognition. There's so many things that reading and continuing to consume different types of material can do for us, because I truly believe that we are stagnant if we are not always learning. So reading is one of the ways that we can do that, and kind of, and I'll admit, as a child, reading was a big escape for me. As you know, if you've watched a Wellness Wednesday before, my childhood wasn't ideal. And so reading was often an escape for me, as was music. But for some reason, I just stopped doing it, and I have picked it up again recently. And if I'm not reading my textbook, or articles related to my schoolwork, then I'm usually reading some sort of self-help. I have found that I particularly enjoy autobiographies if they are well written and entertaining, and just all kinds of self-help books, and occasionally some science fiction or some kind of fantasy novel to mix in there. So reading is an excellent, excellent form of escapism, and it is good for your mental health. Singing. I talk about music, I talk about dancing, but very seldom ever do I actually talk about singing. Singing is a huge stress reliever. It's a huge mood booster. So if you are riding behind me, if you've ever been behind me, and a friend of mine actually made sure my windows were tinted one time for my birthday, because she was behind me when I was bringing my newer vehicle home, and I was dancing and singing, and she's like, you know, I can see you, right? So singing, it's a thing, and I can tell sometimes where I'm at, what kind of space I'm in, if I'm listening to music all the time without singing along, or if I'm singing, because I know the words to most anything that came out in the 80s, most of the 90s, some of the 70s. And so if I'm not singing along, I'm either deep in thought or I'm not in a good headspace. So if you pass me on the road or you're behind me on the road and you see me dancing and singing at the top of my lungs, then chances are I'm in a really good place. And sometimes it's the singing that really helps with that. So singing is awesome. And if you don't want anybody else to hear you, then just keep the windows up and sing out loud to yourself. What I'm listening to, what I'm singing along to frequently depends on my mood. I am not suggesting that you have to go find a stage and do karaoke. If that's not your thing, if you're struggling with a little depression or anxiety, or just feeling down, then maybe that's not the best thing for you, but turn on something that you can sing along to, something that brings back a little nostalgia, and sing along with it. See if you can remember the words. Again, that's good for your memory, cognition, which is always great for your mental wellness. Coffee. Coffee is actually, now there's mixed signals on coffee, and if you're struggling with trying to get off of caffeine, coffee may not be the best choice for you. I know that there are some times that I know I shouldn't be drinking coffee because it does things to my stomach that I don't necessarily appreciate because I have a high acid stomach anyway. But coffee is actually linked to lower rates of depression. Does that mean you should drink a pot of it? Probably not. But a cup of coffee in the morning is a great way to boost your mental health. And if you are trying to get away from something like coffee or caffeine, then you can look at other drinks like teas, herbal teas, green teas that are good for you to give you that same kind of feeling. If you want just a little caffeine boost instead of a big one, then green tea has a much lower rate of caffeine and is very, very healthy for you in a lot of other ways. Coloring. I want to talk about going back to our childhoods. I've already mentioned that a couple of times. Reading as an escape when I was a child, appreciating nature. But there are a lot of things we did as kids that we underestimate the power of today. And one of those is coloring. Coloring is one of the #1 recommended items for boosting your mental health. Actually being creative in general is kind of a big deal, and it's a great expression for depression, anxiety, thoughts that you just are having trouble articulating, whatever. There's a reason why in play therapy for kids, they use coloring and drawing as a method or a technique, because sometimes you can articulate things when you are being creative that you cannot articulate otherwise. So coloring is actually a great thing. If you've been paying attention in the last few years, there's all kinds of adult coloring books out there, faith-based, cuss words, whatever your pleasure. Yes, in fact, I'll probably regret saying this, but a few years ago on a road trip to Michigan, somehow I managed to book ourselves a hotel right near the Hustler store. And we were curious, so we just kind of walked in to check it out. Most of that store was kind of uncomfortable for me, but I did walk out of there with one thing for my daughter. I know that sounds weird, but it was an adult coloring book full of cuss words, something I knew only she could truly appreciate. So coloring is very therapeutic, very healthy, and it's another form of escapism. It's also a way that you can actually sit down and just do one thing without touching your phone, without multitasking. If you just sit down with yourself or with your children, grandchildren, whatever, and break out a coloring book, print a coloring page. I know our NAMI Citrus Facebook page frequently posts coloring pages on Saturdays. It's become kind of a thing. And just sit down with some crayons or some markers or whatever, even if you're just feeling black and white and you want to shade it with pencil or pen. Coloring is very therapeutic and definitely worth a try. And in the theme of nostalgia and doing like we did when we were kids and we were innocent and we enjoyed things before we got a chance to learn how to overthink them, climbing a tree is another thing that helps to relax and lower tension. There's actually groups in Georgia and Colorado that do this. They are groups that find trees to climb. Now, with that said, if you are of a more mature age, I'm going to try to say that gently, you might not want to go too high. You might not be able to climb a tree. You might need to know your limits in this department. But things like climbing a tree, think about the things that gave you joy as a child. And if they're not dangerous, and they're not too physically taxing for wherever you're at. They're worth giving a try. And if you can't climb that tree, maybe you can find a beautiful one that offers a little shade to sit, maybe have a little picnic underneath, and do things that you haven't done since you were a child. Pick flowers, smell flowers. If you find some blackberries, pick them, and just enjoy nature. So again, that climbing a tree, not only does it increase relaxation and lower tension, but it goes back to those childhood things that we did because we felt invincible and because they were just things that we could do, that we enjoyed. And sometimes those things are highly underrated, like the next one, which is swinging. I'm part of a Gen X page because I find a lot of the information in there, a lot of the posts funny and entertaining and things that I know a lot about. And one of the things that was posted the other day was swinging so high that the legs of the swing set lifted off the ground. Now, I was one of those rare children, and I don't think we were actually that rare, but I didn't see anybody mention this in that post, where I could actually swing so high on the playground that I could flip around the bar. Would I try that now at 50? Absolutely not. I feel my mortality if I get a little too high off the ground. And I certainly wouldn't want to attempt trying to swing around the bar again. But I will tell you that when I have the opportunity and I'm near a playground, I will hop on a swing and do a little leg pumping and get going for a little bit. Because to me, just like when I was a kid, there's not much out there that can make me feel closer to flying than really just swooping through on a swing. It is fun. It is relaxing. It gives me joy that I can't explain and I don't really experience in a whole lot of other ways. A type of joy that I probably haven't experienced since I was a child. And I think swinging even just a little bit is really important to getting some of that joy back. So the next time you're at a playground, as long as you're not taking a swing seat away from a child, on one of my trips to Michigan, some old friends and I, we went to our old school and we swung on the playground. Nobody else was around. So as long as you're not taking a swing from a child, and I know some of the playgrounds will be like adults only, but there are places that you can go that you can find to swing. And we even have a swing in our backyard. It's definitely worth a try. I promise you, you will find a joy. There's nothing for me like getting the swing going and then leaning back like I did as a child, holding onto the chain and just looking at the sky and feeling that flop in your belly like you're on a roller coaster. There's just no words to describe, but it's something simple that you can do, relatively injury-free as long as you don't do anything dumb. Like try to jump off of it like you did when you were a kid, or try to swing high enough to flip the swing around the bar. But definitely worth bringing a little joy and relaxation into your life. So another thing is to pet something. Now, a lot of us know this. A lot of people have emotional support animals. We know that animals are therapeutic, but it's not something we may think of on a daily basis, especially for somebody like me that's at a place where I've had enough animals and I don't necessarily want to have any more. But it doesn't mean that petting an animal can't be advantageous. When I go to my daughter's house, I pet the dogs. I do not pet the snakes. I'm just not there. Just not there. She's trying. But I do pet the dogs. I do love to pet my first grand dog, Rugi. There's a place nearby. I meant to ask Eric this morning, actually, where it was. But there's a place where there are rescue raccoons, and some of them have become pets because they couldn't be re-released into the wild. So you can actually go and you can pet and play with raccoons. My daughter took me once for my birthday, as a birthday gift or a Christmas gift, to go see the penguins, and I got to pet a penguin. There is something very therapeutic about petting an animal, enjoying an animal. For me, especially if I get an opportunity to cuddle or pet a bunny rabbit, that just sends me right over the moon because I think they're such neat little creatures. So if you have an opportunity to safely pet an animal, that's why petting zoos are so popular. It can be very therapeutic. Even if you're not into having a pet, you can find a place, a pet store, whatever, where you can go, a shelter, where you can go and you can interact with animals and enjoy something a little different. So definitely pet something with its permission, of course. Cooking is another huge way. Good morning, Miss Elsa. Thank you for stopping in. Cooking is another great way. We've all heard the stories about women who baked when they were pregnant, and women because they were nesting, and women who baked when they're stressed out, and women who bake just to deal with different things. But cooking is actually very therapeutic, especially if you are not stressed out by cooking, like I used to be, and have reached a point where you can kind of play with the ingredients and experiment a little bit. Now, I can tell you that when I first started cooking, I wasn't really taught how to work in the kitchen. So I didn't really learn to cook. Like, I literally could barely boil water by the time I was pregnant with my daughter. I just wasn't good in that department, and I wasn't comfortable, so cooking was very stressful for me. My spaghetti sauce recipe is amazing now, but it has undergone years of evolution, and on the rare occasion I did cook, because my husband always did most of it, I made a holy mess in the kitchen. There was a new dirty dish for everything I had to do. Everything was dirty. Everything was spread out all over the place, and cooking was very stressful. That is not the case now. Now I don't mind cooking. In fact, sometimes if the house is full and I'm feeling overwhelmed by too many people, I go to the kitchen and I start cooking or cleaning or doing something in the kitchen, because that feels like an area that I can control when I'm feeling a little out of control. But cooking can be very therapeutic. Learning a new recipe, it allows you a little bit of room for experimentation. And you can just cook for yourself. I know a lot of people don't like to do that. But guess what? When you're the only one that can try a recipe, you're the only one that can critique you, right? So cooking, trying new recipes, these are things. Baking, if that's your thing, these are great ways, if that's your happy place, to help reduce stress, depression, and anxiety. Again, if cooking stresses you out, the kitchen is probably not the place for you. Unless cleaning helps you, in which case go to the kitchen and clean. Watching a movie. My favorite movie that I call my attitude adjustment movie is Bruce Almighty. Find you a movie. Now, there's some science that says when you're sad, watching a movie that will make you cry is good therapy. But I say, just like with music, to be cautious with that, because while it can sometimes prompt a good catharsis that we may need to just get that out, it's sometimes the wrong music or the wrong movie can kind of help you unpack and stay there when you're struggling. So use this with caution. But I know that when I'm getting a little foul and I'm getting a little testy, and I feel like everything's going wrong, sitting down and watching Bruce Almighty really, really helps me. If I'm feeling a little sad, in the past when I've not felt great about relationships, sometimes watching movies about wonderful relationships could kind of have a dual effect. Sometimes it made me feel worse. Sometimes it made me feel better, made me feel like hope was out there. It's not really a problem I have anymore, but I still like some of those movies just because I enjoy them. But you can find a good movie that's inspiring or that you know makes you cry if that's what you need to get that catharsis started. Something that's really funny to kind of change your mood. I came home from work one day years and years and years ago when Tommy Boy was first hitting the television. And I worked two jobs at the time, and I worked in a movie store at the time, and I wasn't a fan of slapstick humor, which is what I thought Tommy Boy was with Chris Farley and David Spade. But when I got home, my husband and our neighbor were just getting started watching Tommy Boy on TV, and I kind of rolled my eyes, but I was tired from the day, so I walked in the door and I plopped down in the chair, dropped my bags, and just kind of sat there. And I'm going to tell you that I did not move from that chair except when I fell out of it laughing. That movie was just what I needed that day. I needed good belly laughs. The movie was totally not what I expected, so don't always judge a book by the cover. But if you need a good laugh, Tommy Boy, if you like that kind of humor, is fabulous. Bruce Almighty is humorous, but also has an inspiring story as well. And again, I call that my attitude adjustment movie. And then recently I just watched one that just hit streaming. It just came out of theaters. It's called Ordinary Angels. Very inspiring, probably make you a little teary, but for lots of good reasons. And if you need a reminder that even just ordinary people that have problems with anxiety, depression, addiction, whatever, sometimes even those most ordinary people can be miracles too. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about that movie because it's going to get me going again. But again, if you're struggling with depression, anxiety, a foul mood, you need an attitude adjustment, there's a movie out there for you. If you're not sure what it is, use one of mine to get you started, or Google some. There's some great choices out there to watch that'll change your frame of mind or help you get rid of the one you're in. Learn a new skill, experiment. Experiment with a new recipe, like I just talked about with the cooking. Write a poem, paint. We already talked about this with coloring. Creative expression is a very well evidenced way of dealing with depression, anxiety, and various other things. A creative expression is extremely important. So experiment, maybe with something you haven't done before. Maybe if you want to write a book, but you've never even journaled, maybe now's the time to start. Toy with a little poetry, color, any of those things. Rock painting. Nami Citrus recently did a rock painting social at no charge. But rock painting can be fun, especially if you're doing it with the intention of leaving the rock somewhere that someone might find it and be inspired by it. I'm not a crafty person. My joke in the family is that crafts kind of the crafting gene skipped a generation. It skipped me and it went from my mother to my daughter. They are both very crafty. My mother knits. My daughter makes all kinds of cool homemade ornaments and stuff like that at Christmas time. They're both very, very creative. I'm creative with words. That's my thing. But find a way that you can be creative or do a little creative expression. If gardening, outside, landscaping, whatever. It is a guaranteed way to take your mind off your troubles, help you focus on one thing, feed your self-efficacy, keep trying something that nobody else even has to know about if you don't want to share because you're afraid of failing. And remember that lots of people that are very successful failed many, many times before they got there. So whatever it is that you want to be successful at, poetry, writing, painting, whatever, you have to practice, and you can't get better if you don't fail. So don't be afraid of failing. I know that's easier said than done. If you're struggling to have a sense of control over things, you can do like I said, and you can clean, but you can also prep for the week ahead. You can prep lunches, or you can get your clothes out for the week. Kind of gives you a sense of control over what's coming, even though most of it you don't have any control over, right? But getting yourself set up for the week, time blocking your schedule, getting your clothes out if you're planning to work out, getting your meals ready so that you can just grab them. It does give a sense, an internal sense of control, excuse me, over things that you can control versus worrying about all the things coming in the week that you can't control or that you don't even know about. There's a Japanese study, according to Prevention, formerly the magazine, now the website, I think they still have a magazine. A Japanese study team found that tickling rats helped the rats to overcome fear and anxiety before their test maze or whatever it was they were doing. I didn't dig into the details because I was caught off guard by the tickling. Now, contrary to popular belief, just because we laugh when we're being tickled doesn't mean we like it. But if you don't mind it, sometimes a good tickle, the kind that gets little kids going and laughing, those belly laughs, like I'm sure there's a video somewhere of my grandson when he was probably 1 getting tickled in his belly and just laughing uncontrollably. And we kept doing it because the laugh was just amazing. So a good tickle never hurts. Make sure you have permission. Make sure you've given permission. Tickling can be a slippery slope, but the point here is, I think more than the tickling is the laughter. Laughter is extremely important. And one I forgot to mention in what I usually say, but it's a huge stress reliever, huge depression lifter, huge anxiety reliever. So again, use caution with the tickling, because there may be times and places and people where it's inappropriate. But again, there's nothing like, your child, especially when they're like 1 tickling their belly, and it gets a laugh out of both of you, right? So keep that in mind. Now, I guess you can tickle rats. I'm surprised my daughter's not raising them yet for all the snakes. But if tickling rats help the rats, maybe it'll help you too. Something to consider. I know that's a little weird. I did say that this was bizarre things, right? Okay, so be a tourist in your own town. Explore your community. This for me kind of goes along with alone time. A lot of people, and I used to be one of them, struggle with going and doing things by themselves. They struggle with going out to eat or going to a movie by themselves. And having been that person myself, I am a huge proponent of spending time alone with you. One of the ways that you can do that is explore your town, explore your community, explore the town next to you. Be a tourist. Check out the little shops you've never checked out. Walk around in the downtown area. Look around. Go to a local park that you've never been to. These are all ways that you can check things out, like I said, in your own town, the town next door, whatever, and be a tourist. Do the tourist thing. Learn about what's going on. We have here in my local area, we have an Indian Mounds Park. We have a couple of different parks, at least one with a butterfly garden, and a playground with a swing. I did say that, didn't I? We've got a great historical downtown area, two great historical downtown walkable communities. There's all kinds of things. I have lived in this county since I was 16 years old. And some of those shops I just recently saw in the last couple of years. Take part in a little local restaurant fair, check things out. It's definitely worth it. You might learn things you didn't know. You might run into people that you forgot, that you haven't seen in a long time, that you want to, maybe that you don't. But be a tourist in your own town. Don't be afraid. Take a friend, but also don't be afraid to go do that alone. Because it can actually be a lot of fun if you embrace the idea of checking things out and try to ignore that subconscious part of you that tells you you can't do this by yourself. Learn to play a musical instrument. This is a great workout for the brain. I'm 50 years old. I'm not going to tell you that I'm never going to learn how to play a musical instrument. If I know me, I will get a wild hair at some point and I will still try. But there is a lot of science behind music, not just listening, not just singing, not just dancing, but actually creating it, actually creating music. So if you've wanted to play a musical instrument, wanted to learn how to play a musical instrument, do it. Find yourself somebody that gives lessons. There are YouTube videos for every single thing. At this point, at 50, the only thing I might do is pick up a recorder again like I did in elementary school. But I love the sound of a harmonica. I love the sound of a saxophone. If I was given the opportunity or decided to make the opportunity to learn how to do one of those, I absolutely would. I always kind of have wished as an adult that I would have learned to play the piano. I have a friend who plays beautifully, and she can play one of my favorite songs on it, which is a Guns N' Roses song. So that just blows my mind on a fairly regular basis. But it is a good workout for the brain. Learning new things is a great workout for your brain, which means your cognition stays more intact and stays sharper. And when you're successful at something, even if you're just successful at trying it, even if it didn't go well, it often improves your feelings of self-efficacy that can do so much for your self-esteem, your mood, and improve your mental wellness. Strategy games and puzzles, long years, decades of science behind things like Sudoku, crossword puzzles, word searches to keep your brain sharp. And again, something that probably requires singular focus, like when you're coloring. You can do it while you're doing other things, but you really need to focus. And sometimes the key here is, like with the coloring and with the strategy games and puzzles, putting the phone down and focusing on one thing, turning the TV off, not multitasking, just doing that one thing for a little bit can have so many mental health benefits. Don't tarry too long at the wine. Now, this is a quote from the Bible, and I know I don't get into religion a whole lot here, but don't tarry too long at the wine means watch your alcohol intake. There's a lot of people, and including myself in the past, that do self-medication with drugs, with alcohol, sometimes with things that are healthy, but even sometimes healthy things there can be too much of. Don't tarry too long at the wine means alcohol can have an impact on your mood. It can have an impact on your energy levels, especially if you're taking in too much of it. So be careful with that. And the phrase that came to mind when I was thinking about this and when I was doing my research and reading about alcohol was, don't tarry too long at the wine. So would certainly never, I'd be the last person that would ever judge somebody for having a drink. For me, I know that I kind of have an addictive personality. So when I'm angry, the last thing I reach for is a beer or a drink. Because I don't want to put those two things together. I don't want to self-medicate. I don't want to put drinking with a bad day, or with feeling down. That's just not a place I want to go because I know myself. And I just don't even want to open that door. And I'm certainly never going to judge anybody for having a drink or two, but know your limits and pay attention to your body and how it affects your body, not just during, but after as well. So don't tarry too long there. Don't hang out too long there. One more bizarre thing, that I ran across, it was Prevention Magazine, I think, still. And it was one of those, just one of those, I was like, what? I don't understand. Skin brushing. Apparently this is a fairly new thing. People take a soft bristled brush and they do dry skin brushing. There's literally no scientific backup on this one just yet that I know of or that I could find in my quick searches. But apparently, and this may partly be a sensory thing. I know that children and even adults we actually have sensory toys now, that have rough edges that we can rub, or I have one that's kind of supposed to be like bubble paper. It almost looks like a little egg carton and you can just pop the bubbles back and forth. So it's bubble paper that keeps on giving back. So skin brushing is probably a similar thing. And for anybody that's got a history of self-harm, like in the form of cutting or anything like that, and that's a pretty serious subject that I don't want to dig too much into today because I'm running out of time. But the skin brushing, sometimes, that might feel like somebody scratching your back or rubbing your head or whatever. And it is apparently a thing fairly new to the United States. Maybe look for more information on this later if I learn a little bit more about it. I find it very intriguing, a little bit odd, but hey, if it works, it works. And again, gentle, bristles, whatever. And then finally, the last bizarre thing I will tell you, and it's interesting that Miss Elsa popped on here. I don't know if she's still on here, because she actually helped me to get my own chapter in the Unstoppable Volume 2. But tell your story. Whatever that looks like, whether it's here on a monthly video, weekly video, daily video, in a blog, in a post, telling your story, helping someone else that can possibly learn from your story is extremely therapeutic. Getting to a point, my daughter told part of her story on Facebook a couple months ago, and I was so proud of her because getting to a point where you can tell your story means you are further along in the healing process than you are, and telling your story may actually help to heal a little bit better. So consider telling your story. If you have the opportunity, again, in a blog, I'm working on a few things that may turn into my own book, my own little compilation at some point, or some type of a blog, some of my experiences. But tell your story, even if it's just in a journal or you type it up and you're the only one that ever reads it. But if your story has the potential to help someone else in their journey towards wellness, healing, whatever, then you may find it very therapeutic, not just for you, but for others. So tell your story. Now, that's not really so bizarre, is it? We just think it's bizarre when we think of ourselves actually doing something like writing a chapter in a book, writing a book, putting something out where everybody can see it. That's what seems bizarre to us, but it's really not that bizarre. And finally, things I want you to remember before I let you go, because I'm running a little long on this one today. If it soothes you or makes you smile, do more of it. That's number one. Number two, if all else fails and you can't, and all these things sound weird to you, start with good old exercise, diet, and gratitude. You might be surprised what you discover. Again, anything that makes you feel peaceful or happy is good for your mental health. And let's just talk for a minute about times that you should actually seek help, when it's time to reach out. If you've experienced a stressful or traumatic event that is affecting you for a longer period of time than maybe you or the people that love you think it should be. If you're feeling more upset, anxious, or sad than usual, it may be time to reach out and seek help. If you're trying these other things and it's not helping, that may be a time to reach out. If your motivation has tanked,
or you're frequently feeling agitated, irritable, and angry, it's probably time to reach out. If you're finding it difficult to get through the day or feeling stuck or overwhelmed, it's probably time to reach out. If you're using alcohol or other substances more than usual, or turning to other unhelpful coping behaviors, it may be time to reach out. And of course, as always, if you're feeling like you need to self-harm in any way, then absolutely you need to seek help. And one of the best, if you don't know where to start with a resource like NAMI, like your local affiliate of NAMI or NAMI National, or start with your primary care physician if you're not sure where to go. And your primary care physician or NAMI can give you references and tools to help you. So I hope you found that helpful. If you found it helpful, please share a little bit something different today instead of the normal how to make yourself better stuff, right? And remember that this is always a journey. It's not a destination. Wellness is in fact a journey. It's not a place that you can arrive at and everything's all better. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't see the travel edition, if you want to, let me know. I'll tag you in it. And as always, have a fabulous and well Wednesday. I'll see you next week. Bye.